welcome to this episode of Uncensored Hot Femme, where I have a magical guest, and her name is Fiona McCoss. She's so dear to me because she's one of my former mentors, and she really took me on a journey through the shadows and the darkness and had me really safely feeling ready to tap into more of my rawness and my truth. Radical honesty was a big piece of our work. And honestly, I believe that I remember, I'm going to share that. I remember following Fiona on Instagram. And all this was pretty new to me. And she was the one that I found that was talking more about the dark stuff of the spiritual realms. And I remember why I decided to take you on as a mentor because I always follow, the nudge. I knew I wanted a new mentor, but it wasn't, like I was looking for the mentor. But you wrote a post, and I remember this. You wrote a post that said, own your too muchness. That was literally it. And I jumped into Fiona's inbox and said, I would love to work with you. And I remember you're like, had this fiery energy, like this hyped energy, and you were like, yes, and like asking me a few questions. And I remember you telling me to take my time, and I said, no, send me the link before I change my mind, before I get scared, because that's how I move. I move when I feel the inspired action, and I know I will hit the wall of fear. So I'm like, send the link. And that's how our journey started. And oh my God, it's my kittens wrecking the place. And also how magical, when you have set the intention for something and you just, from a single post, can jump into someone's DMs and we started to work together. I think it was for 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. So welcome, Fiona. And as I always ask my guests, with your own words, please just share. Who are you?
Thank you so much, love, for having me. And it's so funny to hear that kind of rewind back in time to feel into how you came into my world. And I remember those DMs. And yeah, I think it was like the summer of 2023 around that time. And yeah, that was really, I feel like there was a lot of energy in that in those months as well. So thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm honored. So who am I? You've already shared my name. I'm Fiona McCoss, and I am based in the UK. I'm in England in Somerset. Um, and I am a woman's mentor and a wild feminine embodiment facilitator, and I'm also a facilitator trainer. And my work really centers around guiding, or rather activating women back into their unapologetic essence. And that comes through many threads, but mainly, reclaiming the sensual and sexual aspects of the feminine. And in that is another thread of the dark, which I think is part of what drew you to my work as well. And I'm really not afraid of talking about the taboo, and my intention is to like de-shame and unshackle the feminine from all these shoulds and all of these stories that are just being perpetuated to keep us small, stifled, diluted, dulled, and yeah, in a nutshell, that's what I do.
Yeah. Yes, yes, because I was already trained in tantra and around sexuality, and I love that, you know, you were not afraid, as you say, to talk about the taboo, because sometimes it's a lot of, I remember, I don't know if you talk that about that much now, but like the love and light stuff, and like it can be so sparkly sometimes, and we all have these pieces of the feminine that is in the taboo, in the darkness, in the shadows that we have suppressed. So I was really attracted, as you say, to those dark pieces because it felt so true to me. And I don't know if you remember, but I was like, I feel like I'm so connected to the underground, and to be guided by someone to dare to, really tap into those powerful, I would like to add, pieces, because it's a lot of power in the taboo.
Mhm. Yeah. And it's so misunderstood, what's construed as the dark feminine, people think of the dark feminine is what expresses as a shadow, and that's not true. So a lot of the work that we do is like untangling the misunderstandings and the misrepresentations and the demonizations of the dark, because actually, as you know, and as you said, the dark is some of the most powerful aspects of the feminine, but it's been so cast aside and so rejected that it has developed this shadow quality because it doesn't have a true place in this society. So yeah, a lot of it is very confronting work, and it can be a lot easier to not do this and stay in the love and light and the fluffy and the sparkly places, like you said, rather than, actually dance with what am I fucking afraid of? Like, what am I afraid of meeting when I go into those places? What am I afraid of accepting about myself? Be it my sexual desires, be it my true expression, be it what I don't want, be it what I do want. There's so much. It's like opening the Pandora's box when we do this work. And no, there kind of has to be a little bit of preparation for it as well, because there's so much hunger and yearning for women to experience the dark, but there also needs to be a lot of like resourcing of the body to be able to navigate the dark. Otherwise it just manifests in shadow. Um, but I do see a big change in, responsible dark feminine expressions, and it's like this is what we need in the world now. We need this to counterbalance what we're seeing, the destruction and the toxic masculinity, and even the fluffy love and light stuff. It's okay, it's helpful to a point, but then it's not helpful because it still keeps part of woman, of body, rejected and repressed.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, as you say, it can be easy to not go there, but it still kind of rules our life. So going there is powerful. And I hear what you're saying also around the shadow part, but it's only shadow because we have casted in the shadows. And me personally, I think that the light feminine also has shadows. When we are playing nice, we're playing the good girls, it's actually for me a shadow. We're not actually truly nurturing. So I think, the shadow pieces are not connected, as you say, because the dark feminine is not of itself a shadow. It's powerful pieces. And when we integrate it all and can step fully into our power, either be in the bedroom or in life, unapologetically, as you say. But what comes up for me, I would love for you to speak more on why we are so afraid of those pieces inside of us.
Mm. It is because, as you say, the shadow isn't just related to the dark. The shadow is everything. It's parts, it's this like hidden closet in our psyche that we put everything away that we don't want to accept about ourselves, or that we believe that society won't accept about ourselves. So, as you say, it can have its light expressions as well. The good girl, the people pleaser are great examples of that. The martyr, so many different examples of shadow mothering or shadow maidenhood. Um, but why are we afraid of looking at this? Because I believe ultimately one of the reasons is probably because we're afraid of being really vulnerable. And we're very good at wearing an armor, and we're very good at carrying this shield and pretending that we're women and we're like independent and we've got it all sorted out and we don't need anyone and we're strong, we have it all figured out. And to kind of, because it has been so unsafe for us to be kind of quote unquote weak or just, passive or just, in our light, we've kind of built this protective mechanism. And so sometimes when we go and look at some of the things that we deny about ourselves, it's like, oh shit, but then that means I have to feel. Oh shit, then that means I have to go into my heart. Oh shit, then that means I have to sit with my emotions. And, for so many women, myself included, I just shut off that part of myself for years. I remember I didn't cry. I don't even remember crying like all through I mean, I went to a boarding school when I was in my teenage years and I was so desperately unhappy there. And I don't really remember crying like at all through those years. I pretended everything was okay. I suffered through a terrible eating disorder because to me it was like crying or showing my weakness was a sign of like I don't know. I didn't want that attention. I didn't want people to think that I wasn't okay. So I just like stuck a smile on and was like, I'll be fine. And then the space of a year, my best friend died and two of my grandparents when I was in my mid 20s and I didn't cry. I mean, I cried a little bit, but it was like I was so afraid of letting out a decade worth of tears that I just like opened the tap a tiny bit, had a little cry, and then it was like I could just feel my chest and my throat were just in so much pain because I needed to cry so much and I was in so much emotional like distress and I just couldn't I denied that expression for myself and it took another I would say 5 years until I was probably 30 even like early 30s to feel like safe to really just like cry watching a film, cry watching a silly reel about animals, like little things. And now I really celebrate that about myself. And I cry looking at a picture of my nana who passed, and before that just wasn't accessible to me. And so I just think that so much of why we don't want to look at the parts of ourselves that we've neglected and rejected is because we're afraid of what it might like what might open up within us. And it's like, do I have the capacity to hold us? Will I be judged for that? And most of it's like no one will judge you, we're just going to judge ourselves even harder. So it's like a slow and gentle meeting of those parts. We can't force ourselves to sit in the shadows. And shadow work can be so powerful and extremely catalytic. You can do one journal prompt and like a huge part of you can pop open and reveal something. Or, you have to work with these parts and integrate them a lot more gently because you don't want to keep re-triggering parts of yourself along the way, which inevitably you will do because that is shadow work. But it's like taking the space and the pauses in between, like that kind of like that pendulation to really allow what's moved to settle and to have that like expansion, contraction, rather than creating, having like such a fucking explosive release that you've totally fried your nervous system and you end up
Yeah.
like a shell of yourself. So it is like it's very powerful work and it kind of is also like tread carefully, like tread also gently because I think that is we are as a culture just so hungry for intensity. We're so desensitized, so we crave high intensity things. Like dark feminine things often sell out a lot quicker than light feminine things because everyone's like, "Ooh, I want the dark and the kinky and the edgy and the wild. I don't want the soft and the like, ugh." And it's like actually the soft and the slow and the sensual can sometimes be more transformational than the dark, just in a different way, or not maybe more, but as transformational, but they just have very different like time frames
Yeah.
and effects.
Yeah, and I can admit I have a kink for the edgy and the intense. I think I mean I was drawn to you. Like I got a little bit lost in the shadow work, honestly, because I remember one time I was feeling so, yes, I have done. And I don't know why, but I just want to share while you were talking, like I get nausea, like just coming up from my system when we are talking about this, even though I have been doing, and I know you have been doing so much work. And why, I don't know, but it's, our bodies are just so full of information all the time. And to be able to sit here with you and just be in my body and feel nauseated while you're talking and and be grounded and, but what I wanted to share was, and I do believe I see it as portals. I needed to go through my kinky edge portal to reach more of my softness, and some other woman might need something else than what I'm needing. So I think, it's good that there's so many different pieces to tap into and when we are ready. But I mean, as someone with a past with a lot of depression and actually spending so much time of my life in the darkness, but in a disempowering way, I remember one time, because being edgy, I want to like plunge in, but and I remember one time you told me, I don't remember your exact words, but it was like, Anna, it's time to, and I get emotional thinking about it, like, Anna, it's time to, sometimes we come to a place where it's time to say, it's time to move up from the underground because I kind of got lost there. So I can really relate to why we actually being cautious and to take it baby steps to work on this. It's because you said becoming a shell . So yeah. Okay. Hmm. Yeah. So what I also wanted to share, and I mean, you don't know this, so share with you, and if someone has listened or seen the earlier episodes. So I talked about also, I had a real kink for, when working with you on, um, I remember also one time saying, I just want to lay in my daddy's lap, and get stroked on my hair, a real, kink for the daddy. And so during 2023, I told you before, was kind of going backwards, but I needed it. But it was really dark, messy, and I ended up in, I think I just need to take a breath. I ended up sitting at the floor of a drug dealer, because of a man. And I was like, what the fuck is going on, because I had worked on transforming myself and suddenly it felt like, a lot of old shit came up and it manifested in my reality through the men I chose. And I just needed to make new decisions. It was powerful, but right in the midst of it, it was like, what am I doing? What is happening, And also around my sexuality to move through the edgy kinky stuff to really be having a lover where I just, started to reach my softness and cry and cry in the bedroom, like every piece of my sexual expression from my rage to, crying to, yeah, the whole fucking range. So one little thread leading to another, but that's how I also started to tap into my softness. And in one episode, I shared how hard it can be for us to truly open up our hearts and receive, pure, true kindness and love from others, to be truly seen and valued. It can be easier to actually be devalued, honestly, because it doesn't feel as vulnerable as you say.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was what was coming up for me. So
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I mean, it's so true. The underworld is very addictive. Being in a spiral is very addictive. Like we all know what it's like to be in a scroll hole. Like we all know what it's like to go down a fucking rabbit hole and be like, addicted to the pain of comparing yourself against somebody or addicted to the pain of whatever it is, sitting or like picking a scab or sitting and abusing your body in some way. Like, it's what it does is it gives us an escape from the pain. So like we're seeking something, be it alcohol, be it shadow work, be it fucking someone we know we're not supposed to be fucking, be it picking a scab, cutting ourselves, whatever it is, sticking our hands down our throat, whatever it is, to escape this like numbness or this pain or whatever we're feeling. But I don't think, yeah, the way that the feminine can kind of get stuck in the underworld is the same thing, you know? And at a point we someone needs to say, somebody around you, either a caregiver, a lover, a friend, a mentor, whoever, if they see that, it's kind of your responsibility to like throw you a safety line and be like, get out. Like, you've had enough time in the underworld because it's not like never go down there. We all need to go down there, but it's hard for us to set a timer on it, you know, when we're lost in it. So, you know, and this is, you know, balancing the masculine and the feminine. It's like you need that kind of witness, the non-judgmental witness, you know, with that kind of directness and forward motion to be like, okay, enough of the spiraling, enough of the cyclical. We need to move forward now. So I'm going to throw you a lifeline. I'm going to pull you out. We're going to start walking and we're going to stop being so in the emotions and let's start moving up the body into the mind or into the fire or wherever, because there does need to be a state shift after a while. But
Mm.
it's hard when you're in it. I mean, I've been in it. I know what it's like. It's you don't have that capacity to make that decision for yourself when you're in, it's like you're in a trauma response sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you say, it's fucking addictive. So we can, yeah, anything can become addictive.
Mhm.
Personal development work, spirituality, drugs, sex, and it's this pendulum in every piece of our life, I feel like. And it can become a shadow. Like, so it's always, because we are always in motion. So to move through it, I guess,
Mhm.
whatever it is. Um, but I would love to hear more about, you talked about being at a boarding school and like disconnecting. I would love to hear more about your life journey and your story, Fiona, and to share with the listeners.
It's funny, I feel like I've just started speaking more about this. You know, when you're asked that question, it's like your life is made up of so many different chapters. It's sometimes you kind of forget about one that actually has been quite impactful and foundational to why you are where you are, why you are who you are. But yeah, I mean, I grew up internationally. My dad had a job that meant we moved every 2 years. So I was born in Holland and lived all around the world until I was 13. And then I got sent to boarding school to have a stable education through my teens. And yeah, that was like my first. So firstly, it's like kind of the abandonment wound, you know, being separated from your parents, even though it was kind of at the time of when Harry Potter was becoming really cool. So I went through a phase of being like, wow, I'm going to Hogwarts. It's going to be so cool. And then the reality hit that I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to see my parents for like a month at a time. And like, what the fuck is this little 13-year-old, you know, this is pre-bleeding. I still felt so young. And I remember so I think term started on the September and my birthday's October. And I remember that was the first time I'd spent a birthday by myself, and it was my 13th birthday, and I was like really upset. And I think I went down, there was a shared phone, and I rang my mom, and I was like, why haven't you called me? Like, why am I calling you on my birthday? And yeah, I just remember just feeling so alone and so lonely. Yeah, you're in this boarding house with lots of girls, but like you have where I had a house mistress. I was like, I would never go to my house mistress for a problem. Like, no way. There's nothing, she wasn't mean or anything, but I was like not emotionally connected to her. I didn't trust her. Like, there's no way would I go to her with any of my problems. And you know, your adolescence are some of the most like intense years, so many hormones. You know, you are in a friendship group one day. I literally remember I was sharing a room with somebody and I went to bed one night and then I woke up the next morning and then like she hated me and like she turned the whole year in that house against me. And it was like overnight, I lost my friendship group. So I was like the outcast. And I to this day I have no idea what I did or what she thought happened or something. I've got no idea. So that was like another core wound of being like, okay, you've been rejected again, you've been abandoned, but you can't go anywhere. You're just like stuck in this school, you don't have anyone to turn to. You've lost all your friends. You would never go to a teacher. Well, I would never go to a teacher. So they were quite really like difficult years of when I wanted to leave. And then it was around that time when it was, the GCSEs is kind of like your important exams when you're 15. And the stress of studying and thinking about the future. And so, I wanted to do well and I was quite bright. And that was kind of the beginning of putting a lot of pressure on myself, of holding really high expectations, wanting to get really good grades. And yeah, I just started, this is me looking back in hindsight. I didn't have this awareness at the time,
Mm.
but I just felt so like out of control that the only way I could kind of feel like I could regain control was by binging and purging. So developed bulimia and was very good at that for, yeah, 4 years, the last 4 years of school. And yeah, you just kind of live this like secret life, When you're old enough, you get your own room, but otherwise you share in a room with two. So it's like you also really lack privacy as a developing young woman, you're changing in front of people or you're not. I can't really remember. But and it's a very strange institution and environment. And I've since listened to some really amazing podcasts on it that's helped me process a lot of it. But it's like boarding school trauma is a real thing. It's a real thing. And it was like it's my real like, first experience of being in this like microcosm of the patriarchy because it was three boys, no, sorry, five boys' houses to two girls' houses. So boys outnumbered the girls, and it was still very much a boys' institution, and girls came in like 10 years before I got there or something. And the school had been around for like 250 years. It's still very masculine and male centered in the way it taught, in the way it kind of punished people. And yeah, I look back now as an adult and I'm like, what the actual fuck? Like people still send their kids to boarding school. And I know my parents had to because my dad got posted somewhere in Africa that we couldn't have gone to school. So like we kind of had to. But then that's been a wounding in a way of sitting with my dad and me like, okay, well, did my dad choose career over being with his family and keeping the family unit together? It was so there's been a lot of pieces that have kind of fed into yeah, my journey, but I guess it's a blessing and a curse. I kind of had to grow up really quickly. But in a way, you're kind of kept innocent for a long time because you're in this like protected bubble. So then you have to like bring in contraband because you just, you're young and you want to start smoking, you want to start drinking, but you have to like become like an illegal drug dealer because it's a boarding school and it just feels so much more intense than like going to the park with your mates and having a cigarette, which is so chill. And it's like you have to sneak it past like the guards. And it was just like felt so crazy just to think back of, you know, you yeah, and like, yeah, it's wild. So, anybody listening, if you've been to boarding school, I get it. I'm
Yeah.
sorry for you. And if anybody's thinking about sending their children to boarding school, please reconsider what you're about to do because, yeah,
Mm.
yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely like a, it's from, um, oh, what do I want to say? Like, kind of the 1800s era of when they were really popular in England, like when we were, when we had the empire. So it's like that mindset is still kind of in the today's world of boarding school, and it's just so insidiously patriarchal of like you basically don't have any power, you don't have any sovereignty. Everyone's always watching you, everyone's always marking you. Like you have to operate within this very controlled system and do well. And if you don't do well, it's like you don't really have a place. So it's kind of like this very crazy, yeah, bubble of what we see in the outside world, but like condensed with children.
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear like and understand without being there, like making such an impact on your development in your teen years. And what comes up is like, as you say, I see a lot of brown, kind of dark, strict, cold, you know. So, and I don't know, I mean, if I would say like who's Fiona, I would say she's a wild rebel. So was the rebel born there? Or like were you rebellious already as a child or like
No, I was quite a safe child. Like when my mum tells stories about us as kids, I've got two younger brothers. I'm the eldest. There's like two years between us all. But my middle brother was like the wild. I was like the angel baby. It was so easy. I was like the beautiful first baby. Like never cried, slept well, whatever. And then my middle brother came and he was like the wild one who just wouldn't sit still. And so I was quite, but speaking to anybody who's an eldest daughter listening as well, you also have to grow up very quickly when you're younger because if there's more than two of you, you become like a little mum, you know? So I'm looking after middle brother while mum is looking after baby brother. So you kind of are conditioned to kind of grow up fast. So I was like four, no, I was six being a little mum to my younger brother while my other brother was on like the boob, you know? So I didn't really have space to be wild because I had to look after my middle brother when I was little. But I did have some like tinglings of wildness come through in boarding school because it's like I was a horny teenager and I had a boyfriend and like, you had to find somewhere to fuck. So you'd fuck up against a tree or you weren't allowed in each other's rooms, like no way in hell. So you had to find somewhere on the campus grounds outside to have sex with each other. So our place was the top of the squash courts on a chair. And it was funny because each couple kind of had like a nook around the school that was like that people just knew about. So you would know not to go into that place because that couple would probably be there banging after homework time. Um, and I got suspended when I was 15 for getting wasted at like a school disco because somebody gave me absinthe instead of vodka and I drank the whole fucking thing and I spewed everywhere. So I don't think that was like so rebellious. I think I was just being a normal teenager exploring, wanting to grow up and all the things. But I do think having had such a controlled environment to grow up in my teens, I did have quite a wild, um, like uni years. Like I had the best time and I did. Yeah, I mean, I used my body, I abused my body. Sexually, I slept with lots of people, waking up and not really knowing who they were and having to check in the wallet and being like, oh, his name is Sam, had no idea, things like that. But it wasn't really until my just before my Saturn return that I had this fucking huge wake up call. And like it was my awakening that was like, you are literally not living the life you're supposed to be living. And that is when I was like swept up with this wild fever and she, the wild woman, gave me my voice, gave me my power after all of those years of not having it, of being in a emotionally manipulative relationship in my mid 20s and having a mortgage and all that stuff and having this very like split life and just being like, I'm so deeply unhappy and I'm 25 and I have a mortgage and I have a boyfriend who I'm afraid of telling him things because he's going to shout at me or whatever. And it was like such a slap in the face, like, what the fuck are you actually doing with your life? And the book Wild by Cheryl Strayed, I found one day, I don't even remember where I found, but it was like it was like, I don't know if anybody knows the story. This woman goes through a very traumatic kind of earlier years, and she gets essentially walks the Appalachian Trail by herself, and it's like that's her awakening. And that to me, I read it and I was like, I want that. I don't want that, but I want that. Like it was like I was moving through this like trauma that looked different, and I needed to like have this journey of awakening. It kind of I knew that I needed to be initiated into like what was to come. And yeah, I was 27 and literally quit my job, packed up, bought a backpack and went to Asia and I was like, I'm gonna move to Australia and never made it to Australia. I met my life partner in the Philippines and we've been together ever since and yeah, my life just took the turn that it was meant to and now I'm doing what I'm doing, and I couldn't have imagined it. I didn't even know that this is a thing that people could do. Like, no idea did I know that you could do this and make money from it and live like this and have a freedom lifestyle and work with women like that just didn't enter into my sphere when I was in my 20s. But it like all to say, don't even if you're in like the pits of despair, you're living a life that you're like, what the actual fuck? Like I'm so miserable, I'm so unhappy. Do not settle for that life.
No.
Like that's the wild calling and being like, if you are feeling a stirring of unhappiness and of what the fuckness, and if you're looking at your partner being like, I hate you and you hate me, what the fuck are we doing in bed together? Get out. Like, if you, you know, everybody has choice. Get out, change your life.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I love to hear all about this because I never heard your story. So thank you so much for sharing it and voicing it out. And may I ask how old are you now?
I'm 36.
Okay, you
I
know.
always forget. I think at last year I was telling everybody I was 36, but I'm actually 30. I'm 37 this year. Yeah. You know, after a while, you just forget how old
Yeah,
you
yeah,
are. I'm
I know,
like,
I know, I know. Yeah, so I mean, I was really drawn to your wildness, and I can imagine if we talk about suppressed pieces, you growing up in that environment that was so strict, so controlling, where you tried to explore, as you say, you had your own piss for fucking, and like, you know, you still you still do the things, the exploring, and you could feel, a hint of what do you say, a hint of wildness as a child. And it's so interesting. I love, to hear your story. And I'm always I don't really know the word when I hear people's stories because I have my view of you or like my picture of you as a mentor and like to really understand that we have all been through shit. We have all our stuff. And what comes up for me also to, step into that self-ownership of like, what will I do of all of this? Will I follow the calling? Will I break up with my boyfriend and go backpacking or whatever is the calling? Because I think it's not about the thing, it's about what is calling you. And now we are sitting here, and I mean, we're not the same, but in some ways we are the same, like as people, as humans, So yeah, and I'm happy that you are voicing out and sharing all of this. Thank you.
thanks for giving me the space. Yeah, I mean, you're right. You never know what. It's like every day, you meet someone in the street and you might say hi and they're like, "Roar," and they say something to you and you might be like, ugh, what a bitch. And it's like, you have no idea what kind of a day that person has had. You have no idea. Her dog might have died. She might have just been told she's got cancer. Her car might have broken down. She might be a bitch. Who knows? But it's like, it's so easy to judge people and think that we know who they are, and especially with social media and finding people online, and it's so easy to just project your stuff. I'm not talking to you, I'm talking like we
But
can
I
do,
do project, so
but so do I, so do I, and it's hard not to. It's kind of a default thing, but and I do think that's one of the pitfalls of social media is like it can kind of elevate people, I think, in like falsely, because you and I are the same. It doesn't matter about fucking follower count or how much money somebody makes or what job they do or where they live or what lifestyle they have. It's like it doesn't make anybody better than somebody else. And I think that we have to be really careful with the way that we use social media and view people through social media because so much of it is curated. Everything that's up there has been edited, has been filtered, and I do think having a podcast like this and having real life conversations like this is so important because it lets people in to a little bit of what's real, but also lets people kind of gives people the permission slip to be like, oh, we're all just fucking humans anyway. Like we've all got our baggage, we've all got our shit, we all have our, we've all woken up on the wrong side of the bed sometimes, and just to say like, don't, yeah, try not to judge people because that's like sister wounding. Let's not go there.
Yeah, and you have taught me so much, and what I love, even though when I was in your spaces, it also scared the shit out of me. It's so interesting how something can be so alluring and fucking scary all at once. It's so interconnected, fear and desire, I think. Um, so what comes up for me is because you were talking about the bitch, and I don't want to go fully into that, but it just comes up. I remember, like don't be the basic bitch, be the bad bitch. You have so many expressions that I really, because they were so raw, and you have this essence, like the pieces of you where I was, I think, allured by your what's the word? Yeah, unapologetic expression, I guess. Because unapologetic is also not being raw, if that's not maybe like your, we have all different pieces. I like to say we have to find our flavor of a woman, because we have the same pieces, but in different amounts and so on. So being unapologetic is just being unapologetically you. Okay, let's see where there's going. Yes, so what I wanted to drag out of all of this was, so, I mean, you're the one who taught me about the seductress, the whore, and for me to, and this I love about mentorship and coaching is it keeps living inside of you after the coaching container is over. So, you can be like, and especially, 2 years ago, I've evolved more. It was like feeling, I didn't maybe do a good job. I didn't reach my goal, or, but I got what I needed. And for me, I love to talk about the Madonna whore complex a lot, that really manifested for me in 2023 too. Um, but I mean, that's taking like a reclamation of the horror, like those pieces, and to kind of play with it, because you talked about demonizing those parts of the feminine. I mean, you had a program where when I was in your space called the She Devil. So, to play with those expressions, because it's sacred, it's holy, but to play around with it. So if you want to talk a little bit more about your work, and I know you have done so many things, all from the sister wounding to the whore archetype. Bring magic.
Yeah, I mean, no, I love She Devil. It's one of my favorite programs. Yeah, it's like reclaiming the unholy. And I mean, I love to be provocative. It's a lot of the way that I speak, the way that I talk, it comes naturally to just say the fucking thing. And I'm like, I literally don't care who hates this post. I'm just gonna post it anyway. And so She Devil was kind of a part of that, because it's like we are the She Devil, and and some people are like, how on earth can you're not you can't call yourself a She Devil, like, oh my goodness. And I was like, that's the point. Like, listen, like, everything that you're afraid of claiming as being a She Devil is why you need to claim it in the first place. And yeah, I mean, so much of my work is literally just reclaiming what woman is, and who women are, and the current of the feminine that has been so forgotten and so buried underground. And She Devil and the erotic feminine, both two archetypal courses. She Devil obviously around the dark feminine, the erotic feminine around the erotic archetypes, um, all just center around understanding who you are on a foundational level, and working with these primordial blueprints that we have within us, these like psychic blueprints, but also these embodied blueprints that have traveled through our lineages. Some women have a deep resonance with the horse. Some women, like myself, have a deep resonance with the wild woman. That was who came to me first. Um, and there are so many ways that we can work with them, both in our life in the bedroom, but also weaving them into our business and leadership. And this is where I love bringing them in too, because it's not like they just have to be kept for one expression in our life. It's like we get to walk with them and try them on and call them in all the time, when we're in the shower, when we're in the supermarket, when we're having a conversation with our lover, when we're making a sale, when we're writing a blog post, whatever it is. It's just about understanding that you are so much more than this three-dimensional person that you've been told is a woman who has blonde hair, who has blue eyes. And it's like, yeah, but who are you like inside? Like, what are you passionate about? What turns you on? What do you desire? What do you hunger for? What are you afraid of? What do you want to fight for? What do you want to show up for? What do you believe in? Who do you pray to? These are the kinds of questions that I want women to be feeling into and asking themselves, because that's when women do the work, the inner work, and see the feminine as like more of a spiritual journey rather than something to like learn about, but it's like something to live in every day and be in devotion to, life becomes so much more multidimensional. And then the wounding starts to dissolve because we realize we're so different and we're so similar, but we're so different, and that's okay. So I'm not going to go and be jealous over somebody over there because I know that I'm so different and she's so different, and I don't actually want what she has because I've got lots of what I have. And I just think it's this, when we haven't integrated who we are and when we stop labeling things as bad, good and bad, and light and dark, and just have this integrated sense of our wholeness, the wounding dissolves, because the wounding is a construct. The wounding was created by patriarchy, from, the witch hunts and beyond, when, the laws changed to when house and money went through the male line, women's bodies started beginning to get controlled, and that was, thousands of years ago. So this um separation that we feel between women is ancient. It has been through our lines for generations. So it is important that we look at it now, and we can be the chain breakers and the cycle breakers of our generation, and stop passing it on, because it's not true. Like this is a learned behavior. And so yeah, at least I hope with the work that I do, it just begins to offer women ways to unpick the stories and just come back to the truth of who they are. And that is what being unapologetic means. It's not about screaming your voice the loudest in a room. It's not about writing edgy social media posts. It's not about having a lingerie shot. It's not about whatever it is that you think it is. It's like just being who you fucking are meant to be.
Yeah,
That's what unapologetic is. It's just being yourself shamelessly.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and then we're tapping into, shame, guilt, and it doesn't matter who we like, what masks we have put on, or how we have tried, to hide different pieces, because those are also coming out in different expressions. Because, you know, it's it's all everything we're searching feels like it's locked up by guilt and shame. And to come home to the truth of who we are. And of course, that can be scary. We hid it for a reason, and we didn't just hid it through our childhood. It's, as you say, ancient, like things coming up in my nervous system that is probably from, timelines back, that is not even mine. And I mean, so of course, it hasn't been just love and light. You know what? It's love. It is love. It's fucking true love. It's true love to hold yourself in everything. It's true love. So, love and light, love and dark. It's loving on yourself so many cliches and quotes can be so true. Even like, love me when I deserve it least. Because
Mhm.
if I deserve it the least right now, I am probably like in my inner child or something, acting out or whatever. And I mean, it's a delicate balance because I can act however the fuck I want and think that someone will love on me. It's ultimately loving on ourselves. And that was something that was really hard for me to accept in your coaching because, I don't believe in, well, like maybe not everything happens for a reason. It's what we make of it. But I'm also believing in, I set the intention for something and found you for a reason. So, and it was hard for me because you were something I needed to step out of my damsel in distress archetype. And at the same time, it was so powerful because you are very raw and honest and could tap into, looking at me objectively. Um, but there was, also a piece of me that just wanted to be saved. It took some time to allow myself to let go and allow myself to love myself and to I need to step more into my independence. I think we shift of the pendulum from different sides of everything, but we can be more strongly anchored in something. So maybe I feel like I was more strongly anchored in the damsel in distress. And I don't know if you were more strongly anchored in, more hyper independence, but from what you told, it sounds like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, that's my default. Yeah.
Yeah. And my default was, to get sick, depressed, so someone needed to take care of me. So, and to take an honest look at, what is this serving for me? Because I feel like shit when I'm depressed, but what is it serving for me? And the residue of that, even though I've been doing the work, could still be for me to be passive in the bed, getting stuck in the darkness and like so I needed to reclaim my independence. And now I'm rebalancing because I also love to be taken care of. And I love to be taken care of by the masculine, honestly. So I think sometimes as you were speaking on the social media things, I think sometimes we see someone talking about something, sharing their story. I think it's the ultimate truth. So that's why I say I see different pieces of the good girl, because the good girl can be the strong, independent boss babe woman that have been out on the workplace. And I have always been ambitious, but I always broke down. My nervous system couldn't handle anything and disconnected, but I broke down like I literally couldn't go to work. Like I always fell into getting sick. And so I think we have to be aware of like, so say the good girl. The good girl can be the good girl who is like mothering, fixing, taking charge, being like super independent, but it can be the damsel in distress that needs to be saved. Like we all have these different pieces. I see it in the masculine too. I say you can fall into the bad boy archetype or the Mr. Nice Guy or whatever we want to call the archetypes. But so to know that for me, I could actually tap into your magic through your independence, although it was your default, it was medicine for me. So, but there was absolutely a piece of me that wanted to still be taken care of in like being saved. And I've still, as the damsel in distress, I was also the savior, more emotionally saving, tiptoeing, like so. So yeah, I think. Oh, finding that sweet balance,
Mhm.
So it can be so like if someone talks about the good girl and posts about like you need to soften. Yes, I need to soften, but for me, I needed to, step into my independence. So who are this person? Who are you? What are the counter pieces to the defaults for you? Because that might differ for someone else. So we need to Yeah, I like to say never put mentors or anyone on a pedestal and think they have the ultimate truth. The truth is who we are inside of us, and people can help us help guide us there. Uh,
Yeah. No, I
so
love that. I think that's really important to preface because this is when you really need discernment and to put those goggles on and like actually really look at what you're being shown because everybody has an opinion and they're they're valid to have that opinion. And it's like there's a lot of noise out there and you're exactly right. We operate on this spectrum and we have to dance between both sides. And one season we might need more medicine from the dark. One season we might need more medicine from the light. One season we may need to play in our softness. Another season we may need to play in the fire. And we get stuck if we just kind of sit in one and take it as an identity. We're the feminine. We are fluid. We're shape-shifting. We're ever changing. We can't get stuck in one place, otherwise we end up in the shadow. So you're absolutely right. We have to be discerning. And I think oftentimes it can maybe be easy for people perhaps at the earlier end of their journey, right at the beginning when there's so much information out there, you do tend to see, well, I don't know. I mean, I won't speak for everybody, but you do kind of, I tried lots of different things to fit something on to see what worked. And a lot of it's trial and error. And
yeah,
sometimes you waste a
yeah.
lot of money along the way. And like you take a bite and you're like, oh no, that's definitely not what I need. I'll go take a bite out of something else. And it does take a while to feel into the medicine that you need. And again, it's a blessing and a curse. There's more coaches out there than ever. There's more information about the feminine archetypes, empowerment work than there's ever been, and access to it is so easy, which is incredible. And it's like we have to be extra discerning at just sniffing out and finding a teacher that we really resonate with, not just who's popular on Instagram or not just who has a million followers or who claims to make blah money a month. It's like those metrics should not influence the decisions that you make. It's like who holds an embodied frequency of the medicine that you think you want to take and maybe then step into their space because a lot of it's trial and error, as I said. Sometimes you do need to get bitten in the ass and be like, okay, I've learned my lesson. All right, won't go back there again.
Yeah, and I think it's medicine of itself because I mean I made the choice. Yes, I made the choice based of being like unaware, but it still gives me medicine and to have that ownership like yeah, and that doesn't mean that people don't are assholes. Like they can be, but I don't want to fall into the trap again. So what in me took me there, like to have this balance of ownership. And yeah, sometimes some people are stuck in their cruelty. Like that's the thing too, because the world is not black and white. It's yeah. So yeah, it's so true. And I think it's not easy because we are all searching for something that is ultimately in ourselves. And we kind of need help to get there. But in many ways, what comes up is we're kind of looking for a savior, sometimes even a mentor. And we are maybe, especially the more in the beginning of journeying, like we don't have the pieces to have discernment. So we we kind of need to fuck it up along the way to get get discerning in the first place. So mm.
Yeah. And exactly, it is trial and error and I do think there's a responsibility for the leaders, the mentors, the coaches to be really intentional and in integrity with the way that they're selling their offerings because, a lot of what's out there is very persuasive, very shiny, very aesthetically pleasing, and I think maybe a question
Yeah,
to
and
ask
there
yourself.
goes sorry, there goes a table.
Oh shit.
Fine, but I couldn't hear you because of all the noise.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just saying
Training.
that yeah, I think that leaders and coaches and mentors have a responsibility to just be, really embodied in integrity and intentional with what they're selling and the way that they're selling because there can be a lot of persuasive, manipulative tactics out there and a lot of carrot dangling and a lot of promising and a lot of shiny, pretty aesthetics that can hook people in with claims of results and ultimately the work with the feminine and the work with self-development and empowerment is not, you can't promise results. Everybody's journey is different, every timeline is different, and um yeah, just to also notice, when you're making a decision, let it be an embodied, informed decision and not just I want a 10K month or I want to join that epic boss babe girl gang and it's like, okay, but why, And I
Yeah.
think, because a lot of it kind of has this stench of capitalism underneath it and internalized patriarchy and it's like, okay, well, who's in service to what? And just to make decisions from an embodied place and really tap into your why and yeah, you might make mistakes along the way. I did, and that's okay. And I think this is, we're in a really interesting place at the moment when there are so many teachers out there. There's never been this much demand for coaching and for learning from women about women and about the feminine. And so it's a really incredible time to be both a student and a teacher of this because there's so much information out there and consciousness is expanding so much on a collective level that yeah, I don't really know where I was going to go with that, but it is quite an exciting time.
Yeah, we're talking about discernment and yeah, to just be aware. But yeah, I'm hearing you, and I think I'm witnessing right now a lot of leaders who actually have, if they have been the successful ones, they have learned more about embodiment, nervous system regulation, like they're bringing pieces together because, I mean, if we talk about money, I mean, it's a relationship and abundance is our natural state, but like, as you say, why do you want to be in the boss babe gang? Like, why do you want to have 100K per month? Like, what's the deeper desire behind it? Because it's ultimately always a feeling we're searching for. So what's the like the true desire behind it? And what comes up for me too is like we heal in relationship with others. So if you are in the boss babe gang where everyone is disconnected, that's the environment you'll be hanging in. So I mean, what kind of, since we mirror each other, we co-regulate and like we impact each other. So it's so important, I think, to have big visions and big dreams and like, yeah, money is important. It creates a lot of both safety, but you can live a life of whatever you want and nothing is wrong or right. It's like, but as you say, integrity in it all, because it's we are ultimately responsible for each other as well as for ourselves. So, I mean, in a healthy way, not in a codependent way, but yeah. So I think it's really important. And I'm really loving that we're having the conversation. I think this is something that have kept me back because yes, there's a big part of being, magnetic, alluring, seductive. I love those pieces. And at the same time, what's my depth behind closed doors? Like what do I know that I bring to my clients or like uh, and yeah, I can fuck it up, but integrity. And that brings up, I can take in, I know because I got really triggered by you. Do you remember?
With the boundaries, the renegotiating are the terms of, yeah.
Yeah, because you I stepped into the coaching space, and I mean, I love that you can, as a mentor and a coach, you can, flow in your coaching space. But I hit an old wound for me, so I got triggered because you were changing our coaching container because you felt whatever reason, I don't remember, but because you felt you needed it, you needed more rest space, whatever was. And I remember that I got very triggered, and you also told me like I will get you into the she devil, like you're trying to bring all the beautiful pieces of how it would be going on forward. And I got really triggered. I remember, sending you a voice message. And honestly, Fiona, you taught me very much through my triggers too. I healed a lot. You could take 3 days to answer it. Heal my texting anxiety. So I mean, we don't know what someone can take from us, but I got triggered, and this is what a safe space is. Like not safe space, but I could bring this to you knowing that I got triggered, but I knew you could handle the triggered me. So since is about unapologetic expression. So I share that with you. And like this triggers me. I feel very angry, like you're changing this, and I really value the things you do here. And like, yeah, so we talked about it, and I could also practice on like what do I need? What can like and I was could we do like this instead? Or like could we co-create another possibility here? I don't know
Mhm.
if you remember.
No, I do remember it. And I think it was a big piece for both of us because I remember just being at like max capacity and I was like, if I want to be really present and deliver my best to this coaching container, which is what I want to do, then I have to renegotiate what I said I would do. And I can't remember exactly what it was. But it was like, and then we renegotiated a little bit. And this is what, being in a container with somebody who's open to receiving, like yourself, because it's really hard to coach somebody who's not willing to be coached. So I was so grateful for the way that you came back and was honest with me. And then we were able to have this meeting in the middle. And, this is what happens in leadership and facilitation and coaching. It's like you have conflict and you find repair, you find resolution, you renegotiate. Otherwise, it just becomes a dictatorship. If I'm like changing my mind every 2 seconds and rerunning contracts, like that does not create safety. But I think with the feminine, there gets to be this more gentle, heart-centered, like this is what it feels for me. This is what it brought up for me. We get to claim and hold boundaries that feel true to us. And this is why I think, feminine leadership is really changing the game because if I would have continued doing that, I might have burnt out, say. I can't remember. I don't think I was that close to burning out, but it's like I'm no good as a coach then if I'm strung out, burnt out. I'm not then in true service to you. So both, both as the coach and as the person getting coached, it's so important to be unapologetic and voice what's coming up because you then get to create this container that feels even stronger and where you're both more vulnerable to meet each other. And I think that can be really beautiful and really powerful. Because perhaps like 2 years ago, I wouldn't have done, 2 years before or at the beginning of my coaching, I never would have done that. I just would have stuck to it. I would have had client calls outside of times that I wanted to have times. And now I'm very clear of being like, I don't have any calls after 4 p.m. I don't do calls in the evening. People can't make calls, they can't make calls. But before, you bend over backwards and your boundaries are really loose. You reply to people on the weekends. And I'm like, I don't do that shit anymore because I need to protect my energy so that I can show up properly. And like, I take at least 48 hours to reply to a message because Telegram is really overwhelming and I can't be in it all the time. And before I would always make sure I was like replying 5 minutes after a message. And it's like, that's how you burn out doing that.
Wow. Yeah, and I love how, I mean, it's healing to be coached, but it's healing to be a coach and a mentor too, because you're having to like honor your own body and while, learn the game as we go, honestly. And then I think if you would love to share like around like how did a good girl show up for you in your past? Either in your coaching, as you say, you bent over backwards, because I feel like what we're doing with men, we're doing in the like in our work, we're like taking it all over. So we're bringing ourselves everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's present everywhere, but I mean, um, I think I was quite adverse to conflict when I was younger. So my good girl would kind of show I was very like overwhelmed with high emotions. So my brother, my middle brother was always quite argumentative and my family would have like debates at the table and it would never be nasty or heated, but it was quite like he has strong opinions and I would just like I would just it would be too exhausting to enter into the arena and share my opinion that I would just kind of sit back and be quiet. Um, so I don't know if that's a good girl, but maybe it came across as a good girl because it didn't look like I wanted to have conflict, but actually it was just that it was like so emotionally draining for me to even enter into and have an argument with somebody, even if it was like a debate argument. It was like it just felt like that would be too exhausting for me. But I think even when I was at school, I always wanted to have good grades, you know, I wanted to probably I didn't want to fail my classes and I wanted to go to probably a good uni because that's what you're told, get a good grade so that you can go to uni and now nobody fucking gives a shit about what uni you went to, but when you're at school, that's all you care about. And um yeah, I think definitely probably at the beginning of my setting up my business, and I think this happens to most people, it's so easy to overstep your boundaries for your clients, as I've mentioned, like replying at whatever time of day. I remember one of my first ever programs I ran, um, like some people were dropping off the live calls, and I asked in the group, "Oh, what time would be better for you?" And I even remember as I posted it being like, "Why did I say that?" Because then
Uh,
I could already feel, and actually it was a small enough group that it was okay, but I was like, I will never ask that again because like I'm the one creating the container, I'm the one holding the space and setting the structure. But I was so desperate for people to be at the live calls for the live energy because I didn't want to be there being like one person there or something that I was like, okay, I'll give it to you. Let you tell me when is a good time for you. So that was a big lesson as well. And yeah, but now I definitely stand up for myself a lot more. I still don't lean into conflict or confrontation. I won't fight with I'm a Libra. I'm very you're a Libra as well. Like I'm very chill. Like I don't fight with people. I like to keep the peace, but not from a good girl way, just because like I don't like sitting in in like dense energy, and so I won't provoke it. And I'll try and find a conflict resolution like as fast as possible. But I think that is very different to being a good girl and just being like, okay, it's fine, it's okay. And actually, you don't. Like, if I had something to say, I would say it. And I've definitely got better at doing that with my dad in the last years. He can rub up on me sometimes. But yeah, back in the day, I was his daughter. I wasn't, I'm like, I'm not allowed to fight with my dad, so I won't say anything. Whereas now I'm like, I'm a fucking adult. Like, I'm gonna tell him if something pisses me off.
yes. Yeah, so I just loved where this just went organically, as we said. But before we stop, because I know you have so much wisdom to share, and I don't know if my passion is really to talk about the good girl complex and like good girl gone bad. Even from working with you, I had a masterclass girl called Good Girl Gone Bad, and it just holds so much. But when I asked you on the call, I wanted to you to share like since when we come to sexuality, because the good girl archetype shows up everywhere, but like I read something from you that said around why good girls are undervalued and underfactored. And I would just love for you to share your perspective on that.
Mhm. Um, so the undervalued piece, essentially when you're stuck in the good girl shadow, say, it's usually because you're in the trauma response of fawning. And
Yeah,
so you also don't believe that you are of value. You put other people's opinions or you put other people up over you. And so by default, you then devalue yourself. So if you devalue yourself, how's that going to look to other people out in the world? And this is because of the patriarchy, we have just been living in this collective fawn and also freeze response just for millennia.
yeah,
And that is what most people see as women, as just a normal woman, is somebody who is not sovereign because she's being yes, she's saying yes, she's saying please, she's rolling over because she's afraid of her safety. Ultimately, this is primally, this is what she's thinking. It may logically not be what she's thinking or consciously, but this is what her body is like. You need to do this to be safe. And even though the threat has changed, um, that is still how we operate. This is a very learned behavior. We probably learn it from our mums, we learn it from our grannies, from whoever our caregiver was. We've seen this everywhere of, how to just stay safe, how to, not even that long ago, women were property of men, and still the marriage rights are still the father gives the bride away to the man. So he's like giving her from his property to another man's property. Like it's still very present in the modern day of you're not really your a woman isn't doesn't she's not a virgin, she doesn't belong to herself, she always belongs to a man. This is still um very present in the way that relationships work today. And so that means that might present as I will suffer through a terrible marriage because it's safer for me to be married and to have a man's income than for me to be a single woman by myself. How am I going to survive? I've got kids. I need to think about my children, and it all gets very messy. And so that can be how a lot of women end up being in the good girl because they think, and that because our society is not set up to support single women. Even in the 60s, women weren't allowed to have their own bank account, so it's still very recent in our history that women are slowly by slowly kind of untangling their power and their worth from a man's. One of the reasons why I'm married technically, but I will never take my partner's name because I'm like, neither of us believe in the marriage institution, but we had to get married because he's American. We needed a visa, but neither of us believe in that in needing to be married to validate a relationship and to live together. So and the underfucked piece, it's still the same. It speaks to the same thing of like I will be unsafe or I will be thrown out or I will be rejected if I bare my fangs, if I show my wildness in the bedroom, if I speak of my kinks, if I show them my dark and my savage, my disgusting, my grotesque, I will be thrown out of the house, or no man will ever want me because I'm not perfect. And this results in women being underfucked because they're not having the sex that they want or they're afraid to ask for the sex that they want. And it will probably benefit the relationship if she let the man into some of these desires, but it's also, requires a consciousness of relationship because if she's not with a man who can hold that or a partner who can hold that wildness, it could be another woman or it could be whoever, then that wildness, when it pops out, might get shut back down and then she'll feel even worse and then will never voice a single desire. Maybe she grew up in a religious household or a Catholic household, and she was told that has to be missionary. This is the God's way. You're only allowed to have sex when you're married or only to make babies. What are all of these things that we might have been told through our culture, or our families, or our society influence the way how safe we feel in our bodies or how safe we feel to be women. And so I think just fundamentally those are very like basic ways that it's so easy for the good girl to show up in our lives and we don't even realize. And I can see it in family members of mine of just, seeing, and even sometimes seeing in myself when, moments pass and I'm like, oh, okay, I definitely could have spoken up in that moment. All right, that was probably my good girl. And I don't think it's anything that we're ever going to get rid of, or nor that we should, but it's like recognizing that she's there and why she's there and where she's come from, and that it's not our fault that we feel unsafe. It's not our fault that we have this trauma response, but it's like, okay, well, what are some of the tools that we can learn? Or how can I find safety in my body? Or how can I change my environment so that I can feel safe on a day-to-day basis, so that I can live less in my good girl and in this trauma response and more in my unapologetic nature? Because everybody is deserving of having access to that, because that is who you are. But the good girl is a learned, conditioned response, and it becomes so conditioned that it becomes an identity. And then it's really hard to break free from.
Yeah, yeah, I'm hearing what you're saying, and I think what comes up for me that have been liberating my sexuality and my voice and my expression, although fear still comes up, and in the dating world too, even though I think I'm still being held back by a few narratives of mine. But I mean, to be fully expressed, yes, but in a grounded way, so we don't actually trigger someone else's nervous system more than it has to. And even if we are grounded, to at the same time, in some sense, have compassion that other people haven't done the fullness maybe of the work we have done. How can we be an invitation? How can our desires be an invitation? I mean, if someone would have taken me in the bedroom 5 years ago, like I want to be taken now, I would have been shit scared. So I would have like shut down. And so I mean, it's not our responsibility, but at the same time, kind of our responsibility to move through the world. I remember you said sometime like we don't trigger someone on purpose, but we do trigger people, like, you know.
Yeah. And this is kind of what I was speaking to when I said a consciousness of relationship, because as you said, we can't, if someone doesn't speak our language, we can't all of a sudden be like, hey, baby, I'm going to tie you up and fuck your brains out, when 2 nights ago you were being the meek wife lying on your back, pretending to have an orgasm. It's like you need to have, build up, set the set the tone and have a conversation outside of the bedroom oftentimes to, often just verbally exploring desires and fantasies before pouncing on somebody when they're not ready. Because as you said, it's like this is a consensual exchange. And, what we also want to be aware of is too, and I don't think it would, the pendulum would swing that fast, but maybe it would, but it's like checking your own like wild inhibitions and like where the shadow might come out and where it might be like actually quite harmful and dangerous in desiring to live out that fantasy. And it's like, yeah, as you said, you just be really mindful of the situations that you're in, and maybe picking a partner who is more open to that if you're single, or having a real conversation with a long-term partner if it's something you're about to explore together. And but finding a way for both of you to feel safe in your body. And the same if it's outside of the bedroom and you're having a conversation, with your family, bring them into your world with conscious communication. All of a sudden, if you go from 0 to 100 and start screaming in their face when you've been silent for 2 decades, it's not going to land well. But if you begin sharing with them, oh, I've been learning about these things and I'm really curious to start bringing my voice to the table, let people around you into what you want to do, and it will be met and received a lot more. And um, it is a self-responsible piece. Otherwise, it gets messy, and this is where the feminine gets a bad rap, is when she's like too messy, too chaotic, and you just leave a wake of damage instead of actually creating like deep, lasting impact and change.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And what comes up is how I use my seductress a lot in my family to speak on like the positive things of what I want and what I'm seeing, what I'm acknowledging, what I'm appreciating, and just keep, since I don't fear rejection as much, I don't need to fear other people's responses as much. And however the response is like perfect because I can micromanage people. And it has really started to shift a lot in my own family, and heal, at least for me, a lot, both with my ex and with my daughters, and like to also know that seduction, not being manipulative, but actually seduction from a place of speaking on desire, just is very innocent in many ways. Oh, I would just love to. And I told my 17-year-old daughter, like, I think I've told her 5 times at least, oh, I would just love to have dinner with you and your boyfriend because she has a new boyfriend. And then I just leave her because she's someone who needs a lot of space. And now, a few days ago, she was texting me, Mom, I have an idea. Can we have a dinner, you and me and yada yada, on Saturday? And I was like, yeah. So we can do this in so many ways. And we will, of course, also fuck up, even in relationships. But I think sometimes we bring our desires from a very, like other people, like just as we are, male or female, are not our puppets. They are like, everyone is a sovereign human being, as the masculine, as the feminine. So, yeah, expressing yourself in a grounded way, I think. But even when we slip into the bitchiness or whatever, like it's the right people will also see you in that and we can hold each other.
Yeah. And the non-judgmental piece. And the more self-aware you are, the quicker you realize, oh, I'm in my shadow. Let me come back to center. Let
Mm.
me embody the truth of who I am. And obviously that takes practice, but you know, we're human. We fuck up. We can be assholes sometimes. We're not perfect people who have our shit figured out all the time. And I think that's, caveat to say, whoever's listening to this podcast, like, please don't think that I have my shit figured out or that I know everything. It's like I don't. So much of this has been through all the years of my own fuck ups and learnings, and you know, take inspiration from anything that we've talked about in this, but also like it doesn't if you I always say like take the best and leave the rest, if it doesn't land, don't make it fit.
No, just like not trying to fit in specific codes or specific flavors of the feminine more than it's meant for you. And yeah. Okay, Fiona, I could ask you so many more questions, but I don't know. I need to learn how to pee before I record these episodes because my bladder is blowing up.
This has been so good.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that you said yes. I was so excited and scared when I made a firm decision to start this podcast, and now I'm having amazing guests already. Obviously, you're here, and so many more guests I never believed would ever come on my newly started podcast is starting to book with me. So I'm like, what the F?
Wow.
So I'm so excited. And yeah, to really bring your wisdom in here. And honestly, I truly cherish the piece where you shared your personal things with me and us. And and I just love, you say you are a Libra, you're peaceful. And still, you're so provocative in your content. I love contradictions in people. So you're full of contradictions, woman.
Maybe that's my Leo moon that's like the spicy side.
Yeah. 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 So, I mean, I think I thought you were like, like, we would like to put people in boxes. And also, I love then, in this format for you to share more of your vulnerable and full self. So, thank you so much.
Thank you, my love. Honestly, it's been a pleasure. I've loved this conversation. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you.